We've all been transported to worlds beyond our wildest imagination with books. But books are also a great vehicle to get together and exchange ideas. Welcome to Books du Jour. Come and join our authors at the table. Welcome back to Books du Jour for a new episode. My first guest was Charlotte Markey. Smart people don't diet, which tells me I must be really smart because I've never put on a diet in my whole life. And on Pluto, Craig O'Brien says Inside the Mind of Alzheimer. He's going to tell us all about his personal story. And Pleasurable Weight Loss by Jenna Laflamme, which you want to say with a French accent, correct?
Right.
Not the flame?
No.
No, okay, it's much better, Laflamme. And we'll talk about that as well. But Craig, I was last night with the Globe Awards, and Julianne Moore won Best Actress for a part in Still Alice,
right,
which was written by Lisa Genova, right?
Right.
And she wrote the foreword of your book.
Lisa wrote the foreword. She's a very good friend,
yes.
and she helped me with this book.
Okay, how did she help you?
Well, just guiding me, and she gave it several reads, some suggested edits. She's a good friend, and On Pluto would not be possible without Lisa's support.
The stories are pretty much not the same, but they are the same topic. Yes.
Yeah, you might say that Alice without the dress.
Okay. You've been diagnosed 5 years ago with Alzheimer?
Right. My maternal grandfather died of Alzheimer's, and my mother several years ago died of Alzheimer's, and now the disease is coming from me. One of the things about the book, it's about a journey about Alzheimer's. It's not the end stage stereotype that people think that it is. On Pluto is not a misery memoir. It's a book about living with Alzheimer's, not dying with it. What I try to do in the book is to offer myself as a window. This is the first book written by an investigative reporter embedded inside the mind of Alzheimer's, chronicling the progression of his own disease.
How did you actually find out that?
Well, I started experiencing the symptoms. Then I had a serious head injury, traumatic brain injury that what the doctor said unmasked a disease in the making, almost akin to NFL football players. A head injury will not cause Alzheimer's, but it will bring it on or unmask it. I also carried one of the prime Alzheimer's genes, which is a marker gene for it, APOE4. So at that point, the doctor said, you ain't getting out of it. So I thought, okay, I could go to a pity party, or I could go to my muscle memory, which is writing, and I compiled 1,000 pages of notes over a period of time and wrote the book from that.
Yeah.
Alzheimer's is like a plug in a loose socket. You ever go read a book somewhere and the light starts to blink and you start to get a little annoyed, and you push the plug back in and then it blinks again and you push it back in, and pretty soon it's out forever. It won't go back and the lights go dark. And that's what Alzheimer's is. It's like having a sliver of your brain shaved every day. When you get up in the morning, you don't know who you are and what's going to happen. And what I'm hoping with On Pluto is it gives faith, hope, and humor, which I think you have to have in life to fight anything.
And maybe you can tell our audience why Pluto.
Why Pluto goes back to my days as an investigative reporter. I would tell sources. I used to write about organized crime and a lot of white-collar crime, and I would tell sources when we go off record, we're going out to Pluto. And it just sounded like the right thing to say, where no one can hear what is said and no one knows you're there. What happens in Alzheimer's, it's called the Alzheimer's glance or gaze. It wears you down and sometimes you just drift out. I had to invent a place that I was comfortable with in drifting out, and so I called it Pluto.
So when the doctor says you're not coming out of it, is there something you can do to slow it down?
They can slow a progression. There is no cure, it's terminal.
Okay.
But let me ask a question.
Being active, does it help?
Yes. I exercise. I try to eat well, which is why I'm excited about your books.
So Charlotte, let's bring you into the conversation. You're in academia, you do a lot of research. The claim is like smart people don't diet.
Right.
That means what? Americans are dumb?
Well, there was some concern in going with this. It's intended to be provocative and not insulting. And I say really early on in the book that this isn't meant as an insult. I have dieted. Most people I know have. In fact, that's where my interest in this topic comes from, is sort of my own personal story.
So what's new science versus old science for you?
I mean, I think the science has really accumulated across decades, and so it's not just one study that came out in the last year that points to the importance of not dieting. A whole bunch of research suggests that the more we try not to eat certain things, the more we typically desire to eat those things.
We're talking about addiction or habits, which...
Take, for example, the Atkins diet or the paleo diets that have this focus on avoiding bread. Those diets were really appealing, I think, to people because it was like, just cut this one thing out and that's going to do it for you. And we all want those really simple rules in life, like just cut one thing out and then you're going to be okay. People would do that and they would lose some weight, and then eventually they'd think, but I still like pizza and I still want cheese and bread, so I'm going to eat those things. And so they'd start eating them again, and then they'd gain all their weight back, and then more. And then they'd feel bad about themselves, and they'd still be heavy.
The assumption is food, too much of the same food is bad for you, or is just the assumption is we are all the same and it should work for everyone?
I think both of those things.
Okay.
Most diet plans are very prescriptive and saying, you know, you can't have this or you can have that, and that's just the way it has to be. Just how are you going to live like this for the rest of your life? Because if you really think that you're never going to eat bread again, then fine, take that approach. But I just don't know many people who really want to do that. Thinking about it in a common sense way, you don't want to completely restrain yourself from foods you enjoy.
Is that what we're talking about, longevity?
Diet certainly can help.
Okay.
It's not going to save us all. Greg may have been eating well his whole life, and you know, we don't all luck out in the end. Certainly coping with whatever illness we have or whatever genes we do have, food can be a big part of that, I think.
Jenna, you work with a lot of women.
I do.
Have you encountered women with illnesses, terminal illnesses, cancer, or Alzheimer? Or
From time to time I have. And I've had women that come to me saying, I know I'm going to die, but I want to learn to love my body before I die.
And do you think there's a real problem about self-perceptions or spiritual development in one's habits of eating food?
Globally, for sure.
Yeah.
And at the root of that, I believe, is our issue with pleasure. And then when we learn to really embrace pleasure as a natural phenomenon, as something innocent and pure and welcome and needed, then we can actually invite the food with attention, we can enjoy it, we can find satisfaction, peace, and relaxation, and that creates the best conditions for your metabolism, for your whole nervous system to support health, no matter what the concern is.
Are we talking about body dysmorphia or mental dysmorphia, self-perceptions, where when we eat food it's always with guilt and I should not and should?
Yes, I mean, I think those are two different things. One, the body dysmorphia is women, particularly, it happens for men too, not seeing their beauty and instead honing in on these very specific flaws rather than softening and widening their eyes to the full picture of being an attractive person. And then, of course, the guilt at the table is another thing where we can never enjoy if we're feeling guilty.
Well, what got you interested in the field?
From the time I was 14, I started struggling with an eating disorder.
Okay.
And looking back, I was really a healthy girl becoming a woman, but I had no frame of reference for respecting my body and understanding my body's changes. And I went straight to the diet culture of control, restrict, be skinny. That's the way to go. And that snowballed into about 10 years of binging, restricting, controlling, dieting, and day after day feeling drenched in shame, guilt, and self-loathing. That suffering led me to need a solution, which led me to here.
A lot of women suffer from that, you know, and secretly and not sharing it. I'm sure you probably see a lot of them too.
Right.
Why is this culture seems to be manufacturing so many problematic symptoms of a relationship with food?
There's a few principles in our culture that I'm completely against and wanting to change with this book.
Okay.
One is this idea that the mind is superior to the body. I'm trying to bring in this idea that your body is a living animal. This is what it is. When someone feels bad about themselves, they will spend more money. When a woman doesn't feel beautiful, she will buy...
Product driven.
It's product driven. It's industry driven. So it actually is radical and revolutionary to say, you're beautiful.
Right.
Enjoy yourself. And the woman who wants to lose weight won't believe it. So pleasurable weight loss is sort of guiding her there in two ways, saying you don't have to wait to lose weight to enjoy yourself, and you don't have to restrict yourself with food and control yourself. You can enjoy that too, All of this will put you in a relaxation state, scientifically, metabolically, where your calorie burning is heightened and you're more likely to lose weight. There's a leap of faith against the diet culture that says you must control in both of our approaches that says, no, you can actually relax into it and trust that you can be healthy with food and you can love your body.
And I think the science is pretty compelling too, that when you develop an appreciation for your body and you stop feeling ashamed of it, that you'll take better care of it. There's actually great research to suggest that if you just work on sort of approving of yourself first, that will actually lead you to take better care of yourself and eat better and weigh what you should weigh.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, please.
One of the things in listening to this that got me triggered are ways that you can increase your metabolism. I grew up in a large Irish Catholic family, one of 10 kids, and my mother was Irish and she wasn't a good cook, and if anyone's Irish watching, deal with it because they're not good cooks. So,
not known
like
for the
French.
food.
And we would come out and the food would go on the table, and we were, you talk about animals, we were like wolves, just because it's gone.
That's right.
You got to eat, and so I learned how to eat quickly, and I have everyone tell me that I inhale my food and I shouldn't. So obviously it's not good table manners, but is that bad for the body, or?
Yes, you have a huge opportunity to enjoy yourself more.
That's right.
Because I'm worried there's not going to be any more food, so I got to.
Sure, yeah,
I'm
it's
just saying.
confidence, yeah.
I know, but that's an important mindset to change, and I
Yes.
think this is what happens with dieters too. It's like, this is the chance I can do this now, or this is, I have to have this now because then I'm not going to be allowed to eat it tomorrow. But when we all just accept that there's, in our culture, usually more food to come, so just enjoy what we have now, and you don't have to overeat it or undereat it or eat it quickly. There's going to be another day.
Still, there's a relationship. The body's relationship with his own reaction it's got his own agenda, right? And so, how do you shift that?
Here's the thing, your body has a biological requirement for
Sure.
pleasure. We're going to get it consciously or unconsciously. So let's get it consciously. If we were unconscious, yes, eat, drink. Okay, eventually you hit a food coma, which is literally a forced relaxation where your body says, oh, okay, I got it.
I can't do it.
Also, if all your pleasure is only with food, then of course you're going to overeat because that's your chance. But if you also have pleasure in friendship, in community, in sensuality, in sexuality, in creativity, so many areas of life, then you won't need to take it all out on the food. Really enjoy, be present, slow down, savor without guilt, and encompass that in a life that's full of joy, satisfaction, and pleasure.
So, do you design meals for people?
Not necessarily.
Okay,
That's
small.
not so much my specialty.
Okay.
More, I'm giving them instructions on how to eat for pleasure.
Do you eat yourself into a coma?
No, see, I don't eat early. Some of the medication I take takes my appetite away. At the end of the day, after I've worked out, after I've written, after my mind has settled down, I eat. That's my big meal. Where during the day, you know, you're going to have me arrested. I just drink coffee, and well, you saw me over there before the show. I think.
Did you bring the handcuffs?
Yeah.
Right.
Let's arrest him right now.
What advice could you give people about when they should eat?
The most effective time to eat is in the middle of the day when the sun is highest. So it might take some adjustment, and this is where it's a combination of your body and your mind working as a team. Instead of controlling your body or letting your body run loose, let it be teamwork. And you could guide your body to eat more in the day, and then you won't need to eat so much at night.
I'll try.
Charlotte, is there a big psychological problem in the relationship with food?
We have a food environment that fosters overeating and not enjoying what we eat even, and often eating a lot of garbage. You know, it's just so readily available.
I have a nanny of 2 kids, young,
Yeah.
and the way they're being brought up is radically different from the way I was brought up. I was left to my own device and just go in the street and do whatever you have to do.
That's right,
But they have food on demand and snacking non-stop.
Right.
And I would say, but why do they need to snack in between meals? And
We have this conversation at my household all the
Oh,
time.
yeah.
You know,
So
my
why
kids
this
come home
happen?
from school and they're hungry, and I'm like, but we're having dinner in an hour.
but hunger is good.
Hunger is right. I mean,
Hunger is good.
Hunger is good.
you want to feel hunger, and then
Yeah.
you want to feel satiety. So,
Are those addictions or just designed by the media, the bad habits, or?
I mean, they're definitely not addictions in the traditional
Okay.
sense.
No,
You know,
but-
I sometimes feel it's a little bit problematic when people start talking about food and addiction, the way they think about food and
Sugar is
alcohol.
addictive, yeah.
We all create habits, some of which are more adaptive than others. You know, if you get used to having a lot of coffee, it's going to be a habit. You're going to miss it. You can change it. You don't necessarily need to go to coffee rehab.
Do you have any thoughts about brain food or good foods to eat to stimulate your brain?
I'll pass to her with the food and instead go with the pleasure angle, that I'd say the brain food is, how's your nervous system? Are you in stress, anxiety, or are you in relaxation and peace?
Your body will process the food differently according to the state of mind you're in?
Yes, your body will process the food differently according to the state of your nervous system, which relates to the state of your mind and your body. They all work together.
Charlotte,
In terms of, you know, brain food, I think in Smart People, I do have a list of like 10 foods you should always have in your house, you know. Some foods are much more nutrient dense than others. Almonds, for example, are a good food. Salmon is a good option.
What's in the nuts that are whatever
The
is in
oil?
it?
Yeah.
That's the oil.
Yeah.
Yeah, but then you read the newspaper and you read, like, if you eat farm salmon, you get cancer because it's full of PCB, and then you're just like, okay, where do we go? And you go, saltfish is mercury, and then you have a cocktail of metals in your body.
I know.
Right. I mean,
This
I
is
think
reality,
that
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
most of us understand what we need to understand for the most part. What we really need to spend more time thinking about is the psychology behind our food choices, because that's what people don't realize. They don't realize that trying to be too extreme or worrying about it or feeling guilty and not enjoying food is actually counterproductive in terms of just adopting what most of us already really know, which is that maybe we don't want to have this for lunch every day. You know, we have to think about it psychologically.
It could be, yeah.
It is the
There seems to be
problem,
a trend in medicine. That's why I talk about gene therapy, maybe it's down the future in 5, 10, 15 years. With the psychology on top of that should work as well. Probably better.
Right.
Yeah.
A lot of what I'm trying to talk about is taking the strategies I offer and adopting them for your own lifestyle. Well, I don't believe you can say, like, just don't eat bread,
That's right, yeah.
I mean, I think you need to say, in general, these are some things that you need to do. Or I suggest, for example, take your beverages and try to focus them on lower calorie beverages. And that's the problem with most diet plans, is say you have to do A, B, and C, but a lot of people don't like A, B, and C, so they need a more flexible strategy that's going to work for them, that's prescriptive but not overly controlling. And so,
You know, I think that's where medicine and health is going. Dr. Rudy Tanzi of Harvard and Mass General, he's working on a cure for Alzheimer's, and what they're trying to do, not that it will affect people like me, but find ways of looking at the coding of people's genes early on to see who might be predisposed to that, and working with them so they have a better understanding of how to better take care of their body.
Your projection for Alzheimer is pretty drastic for the next 10 years.
At some point, they will have some kind of cure or cutting back. So what I try to do with what I'm doing is stay focused as a journalist. It's the only thing I ever, you know, I'd be a special needs kid if I didn't do what I do, which is write and communicate.
Have you become a more spiritual person as you grew, as the illness or the realization of the illness has been apparent to you?
I have. I stopped feeling sorry for myself about Alzheimer's, and I felt God, however you want to define God, saying, okay, pal, do you hear me?
Yeah.
I got your back, and maybe we could start to do some things together.
Maybe you should read the book of Job.
Yeah, right.
It says that's your story there,
Yeah.
right there. You know, do you find people with a spiritual bent more prone to be healthier?
I would say yes.
Yes. Yeah, and you've come across a lot of that, or is it it's a guess?
There are different types of spirituality,
Sure.
and that there can be a spirituality that's very head-based or air-based, abstract, and there's a spirituality that can be very practical, embodied, and felt.
It felt it was. I think spirituality is a felt experience more than people know.
In my way, I'd say it was, and you know, it comes to the question of what is the meaning of life? Pleasure is the meaning of life. That which gives us pleasure gives us meaning. And pleasure is about being present. You can't have it unless you're present. And every spiritual tradition preaches about being present. It's about being in the here and now. And in a way, I'd also say pleasure is the highest form of responsibility, to use a favorite quote, meaning, okay, it's very easy to suffer and complain. Oh, I need to lose 50 pounds. Like, damn, that's going to be hard. Or your situation versus how you've done it.
You know what's so good about what you just said? In Alzheimer's, you have to learn to live in the moment. And I kind of think that's maybe what you're saying, where you're embracing the moment, as opposed to embracing guilt.
It's counterintuitive. We tend to avoid pain, so we do whatever to hide it, but to actually go with it and be with whatever it is, it's counterintuitive.
Well, and I think when it comes to food, that we're so accustomed to feeling guilt surrounding food, right? It's a pleasure and indulgence that we're discouraged from really enjoying. And so I think that part of what Jenna's doing and I'm doing and you're doing in your own way in your book as well is trying to inspire people to enjoy life more, right? So in different domains, obviously, but how can we essentially enjoy life more and get out of the struggles, right? Not get caught up in things that we don't have to get caught up. And in your case, that may be harder than in many people's, but it doesn't mean it's impossible, as you're evidence of. You know, it can be hard to not feel like you're just struggling. And I think for Greg and people who are really dealing with serious chronic illness, that's probably more so the case. But we can all still find some pleasure in life. And I think eating and food and sort of the daily mundane behaviors we do can be part of that.
I have a blessing because I know the ending of my book before I read it. But there are people who are getting up, whether it's in Europe or Africa, or wherever, just some France, horrific things that are happening around the world. If you're living in the moment and you buy into my comment, which is really true, no one gets out alive. Anyone doesn't think they're going to die someday, please raise your right hand.
Yeah. Right.
And because I'm going to win a Pulitzer Prize on that story. And, you know, so you live in the moment, and you try to embrace those who cannot live in the moment. And there's so many people around the world who cannot live in the moment because of fears that we don't have to deal with.
Have you ever been on a diet?
Of course.
Yes.
I'm a woman.
Well, I'm asking.
I mean, I think a lot of men have been too, but I mean, I admit this, you know, first thing in the book is that if I hadn't been on all kinds of diets when I was younger and tried them and realized how completely miserable and ineffective they were, in college I started studying eating behaviors and started to realize, wait a second, this is exactly why this isn't working. There's science to explain my story. The moving away from dieting is, I think, a really important cultural movement that I hope people embrace for a variety of reasons.
Yeah.
And I've heard the term recently, second wave dietary theory, second wave diet theory.
Which is what?
Which is not about crunch the calories, you know, eat less, exercise more. We've heard that before. It's about what is happening on the metabolic level. One of the major factors is stress versus relaxation. And relaxation is triggered by pleasure, which is why I keep coming back to that. But all of these other factors of your lifestyle, of the psychology. For example, what is the psychology of suffering? Why do we keep going back to suffering? And one of the main reasons is for the sense of belonging. We feel, when we come from a family, let's say with the 10 kids, and when we like dive into that food without thinking, there's a sense of, or without pausing to feel rather than think, there's a sense of belonging. I'm with my tribe.
A mountain of salt on it too, which we'll get into in a little bit, to kill the taste.
Yes, but it feels like you belong. And when you do something different and you slow down, it's like, oh, but we don't do it like that in my tribe. Am I betraying the tribe? So that's a deep subconscious psychology that we need to be aware of, because often we say, oh, I'd love to have pleasure. But really we feel guilty because our mother didn't have that much pleasure and we'd rather have allegiance with her. Or I'd like to be thin, or I'd like to be sexy, I'd like to be slim, I'd like to be peaceful, but I feel more at home when I maintain this suffering. But as conscious humans, we can let that go. We can make that go.
Is there still places in you where you feel like pleasure is a bit, it comes automatically with the response to say, oh, I can't go there, or it has a break coming through right away?
Yes, absolutely. Sometimes I hit my own edges, and I'd say authentically walking the talk of choosing responsibility of pleasure is a challenge. Like today it was raining, I could have gotten into some anxiety, am I going to be late? Up in the head. That's when practices, embodiment practices like 3 deep breaths, which I recommend before eating or any time, help ground you back out of that.
Bring the monkey down the tree, right?
Yes.
3 deep breaths, just say that again, because that's good for people to hear, because I'm gulping because I'm gulping the food. So.
You're the perfect case study. So you usually would go for your, dive in like you did when you were a kid with the 10 brothers at the table. Right. So instead, pause and take 3 deep breaths. It's going to allow you to smell the food, see the food. It's going to allow you to be with your body as if he was your friend. You pay attention to us while you're at the table. Pay attention to him, your body, your animal. If you don't get the pleasure from the eating, your body says, something was missing. I mustn't have had enough. I need more. And more hormones on the science are activated to create more appetite.
Sure.
Vice versa, if you really savor it, another hormonal pathway is activated where your body says, I got what I needed.
That's right.
Satisfied, no discipline required to stop. Which is a very French way. French have those pauses in between, which allow you to feel it. I mean,
I like this conversation where I think French comes back to me.
That's right.
It does.
Many 20 years, but they won't never go away.
That's right.
On that note, I'm going to close this chapter here right now. And Charlotte Markey was my first guest with the Smart People Don't Diet. As I say, I've done many diets, they all failed, you can see. On Pluto, Craig O'Brien, thank you for sharing with us your personal story. Inside the Mind of Alzheimer's. And Gina Laflamme, which is a very French name, The Pleasurable Weight Loss. Thank you for being on Books du Jour, and I wish you all the best with your books.
Pleasure to meet you guys.
Right.